very much, Harry. Mr. President, Al, members of the Greenville County Historic Society, it's a pleasure for Emily and I and some friends to be here with you here today. It's a dirty day outside, but there are many faces of cheer in here, and I appreciate very much y'all giving us an opportunity to talk about the Greenville Greek community. The Greenville Greek community basically is typical of many other immigrant communities throughout the United States, who have all come together to basically for common causes, needs that they had. The first need, of course, was to find a place to live, reside, and to raise their families. Secondly, to earn a livelihood. And then, of course, to form a place of worship. And ultimately, to preserve their culture, arts, and the various ethnic views. This is very important to them. So from different parts of Greece, young men started the journey to America. A journey to America in order to pursue their dreams, despite great hardships. But from courage from God, courage from their families, they began their quest. And we see one of the old cattle boats, as some people refer to it, that brought these folks over to America from various places. This one was from Greece. It's the SS Patras. In 1910, it transported to New York Spiro Konitz, who is a relative of many of the Konitz families who live in Greenville today. The SS Edison is the next ship that Pat Petrakis came over in 1928. She was on board this particular ship to bring her to New York, to Ellis Island, obviously, and she still resides in Greenville, South Carolina, 91 years of age. These particular boats, of course, were very crowded. There was hardly room to stand, much less sleep on them. It was a gruesome, tiresome journey. The Patras took 30 days to come over. The second one, the SS Edison, required 21 days to come from Greece to New York to Ellis Island. So as I refer to the trip, the ships, they are very often called cattle boats. There's no way that these vessels could ever pass the United States maritime regulations today, I can assure you. But can you imagine the anxiety of these young Greek immigrants as they tried to move their way forward to the front of the ship so that they could take a first glimpse of their new homeland? And immediately they looked into the compassionate eyes of this lady that was waiting in the harbor of New York. Waiting in that particular harbor in the water, and to say to all of them, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to be free. The wretched refuge of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Did they find America everything they imagined? I would say the answer to that is probably no. They found America to be more than they could ever imagine. According to the best sources available, the first two Greek immigrants to come to Greenville, South Carolina were George Kondouris and Sotiris Morogiannis. They were the first permanent Greek residents in Greenville and opened a candy kitchen at where Wachovia Place is located today on West Washington Street. However, the serious migration from immigrants from Greece to America really took place in the early 20th century. Their first need, of course, as I said, was to find a place to live and raise their families. Greenville has always been a tolerant community for new people and new ideas. So that was a perfect fit for these immigrants. In fact, so many of the immigrants' descendants are still living in Greenville, South Carolina today. Their second need, which was a very critical need, to earn a livelihood. The food business, of course, attracted a good many of them because it did not require a great deal of language skills. As a result, numerous cafes, as they were called back then rather than restaurants, were established in Greenville early on. You may recall some of them. The Savoy restaurant, the sanitary cafe that was operated by George Paducas and Mr. Solis and Pete Bybee. And right across the street from them were the Blue Ribbon Cafe, all on West Washington Street. And of course, today some of us might remember the Deluxe Diner, which was just a few feet below the old Carolina Theater. It was unique because it was all a counter, no booths and tables available. It was operated by Jimmy Jubilakis for a number of years. That's approximately where I guess the Ogletree law firm has their building today. My father's cafe was located a few feet or a few yards down from the old Greenville Hotel, about midway to where First Presbyterian parking lot is located today. It was a hot dog hamburger stand, and certainly on the second floor we had living quarters, and on the back of the building there were living quarters where they raised 5 children. 2 of those 5 are here with us today, Stella Manius and Nick Theadore. They're older than I am. I'm the youngest of the 5, so that'll tell you that we got pretty longevity in our family. And I had a brother and one other sister. And of course, we lived there until I went to the first grade at Billy Cleveland when I first met Kirby Quinn. Been trying to forget it ever since, but nevertheless, when Kirby and I first started off at Billy Cleveland School together, and we moved to Camp Street, which was right behind the old Baxton Chevrolet, if you'll remember. Piece number 1 was located on the first block of West End on Pendleton Street. And it was noted back then for their distinct hot dogs, if you remember. And I see some of you are applauding me of the hot dogs of those days. 5 cents, hot dog, mustard, onions, and chili. The whole works. It was amazing. And hamburgers were going for 10 cents. Piece number 1 catered to Greenville High School, Parker High School, Furman, Clemson students. And beside that, it was unique. So many of the celebrities that came through Greenville had pictures in Mr. Manus's office. George Manus was the founder of it. And they were impressed with the fact that we could get these unique hot dogs, and they enjoyed them so. Some of the pictures that he had in his office were Tex Riddle, John Payne, Ann Rutherford, Mickey Rooney, even Betty Grable. And Sammy Kaye's orchestra also participated and ate some of those peach hot dogs back in those days. He also delivered sandwiches and hot dogs to the textile plants, especially Judson, Monaghan, and Woodside. They were working 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, and they would deliver hot dogs and hamburgers to the various shifts. Unfortunately, this is a thing of the past for Greenville County today. While they delivered food, Pete's was also innovative, and so they started serving automobiles that would drive up to the curb and park. And there was a fellow by the name of Shosha who could move around those cars rapidly, serve them all, put the tray on the side of the car, and then when they had concluded, we'd go pick up the tray and take it back in, of course. And hence that the old adage of curb service was determined. Also opening in 1921, of course, was Charlie's Steakhouse. And of course, Charlie's is still with us today. But their original location in 1921 was on West Coffee Street. In 1933, they moved to East Coffee Street, where they're located today, 18 East Coffee. In fact, next year will mark Charlie's Steakhouse 85th anniversary. During the Depression years, Mr. Charlie would recount that they would furnish soup to the YMCA, which was almost across the street, diagonally across the street from Charlie's. And it was amazing to him to see, it was almost heartbreaking to see some of the individuals with spats on their shoes, standing in the soup line of those days. They were tough economic times during the Depression. Cafes in Greenville, of course, were noted for helping people of all varieties. The black and white alike, when they were down on their luck. They were willing to share their food with so many people. Paul Estration is the oldest child of Mr. Charlie Estration, and he related to me recently a story that Mr. Charlie Estration apparently believed in advertising. He had book matches with his picture on it, and you probably saw some of the ads in the paper with Charlie's picture talking about his steaks and so forth. So Paul thought it was interesting, and I thought I might share this letter with you that Mr. Pogue wrote to him, because Mr. Charlie thought that it was important to patent his picture. And so this letter was sent to him from James Pogue. He said, "Dear Charlie, I enclose certificate issued by commission of patent. You have been granted a trademark as applied for. You're now at liberty to spread your face all over the country. I hope your fan mail will be plentiful, and Mrs. Estration will not divorce or shoot you in a fit of jealousy. With kind regards, I am sincerely yours, James A. Pogue." While Charlie's is the only surviving restaurant of those particular days, as you know, there are many, many other restaurants that we all enjoy their good food today. The Pete's, you name the number, the Clocks, Como's Pete's, the Carolina Fine Foods, and the list goes on. But some of the restaurants have taken a little bit different approach, creating multiple locations, such as a chain of restaurants that Stack's Restaurants enjoys today. They're known for presenting a variety of food in each one of their unique type restaurants. In addition to their restaurants, however, they also have a delicious bakery products from, they call Stack's Bakery, next to Stack's Omega. The owners of the establishment, George Tabakis and Stanley Como, are pictured there in one of their kitchens. As you can tell, they both enjoyed eating some of their food. Also, the Open Hearth Restaurant, founded by Michael Malikis, who's now deceased, is still under the family management in second generation by Jimmy Malikis, who's the owner and operator. While the food business certainly was capturing the majority of the Greek immigrants in Greenville, there were other interests in entrepreneurships. One which might bring back some memories to you was the old Eagle Bus Lines, founded by Henry Theadore. This grew into a substantial transportation company. Quite often, Greenvillians would naturally associate Mr. Henry as my father. In fact, early one morning, about 6 a.m. to be exact, the phone rang in my bedroom, and I immediately answered the phone, of course, and he said, "Nick, this is Strom Thurman." And I said, "Good morning, Senator." He said, "Did I wake you?" I said, "No, sir, I had to wake up and answer the phone anyway." So I'm glad you still got your sense of humor. But he said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear about your father dying." I said, "My father died, Senator?" "Aren't you Henry Theodore's son?" I said, "No, sir." "He's your uncle?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "He's your cousin?" I said, "No, sir. I've known him all my life. If that makes a difference, and I'm sorry to hear that he passed away." He said, "Well, I see, but you know, Strom Thurman never quit thinking." So he said, "I'll tell you what you do. If you will, call Drake's Flowers. Tell them to send a funeral arrangement to Mrs. Henry Theodore. Send me the bill. They have the address." I said, "I'll certainly do it. Good day, sir." And we hung up the phone. I thought to myself, you know, this guy's uncanny. Before anybody else wakes up, he's already doing his homework. And of course, he was known for constituent service. But in Greenville, Henry Theodore's first venture was not the bus business, because it's something he had to work up to. He had a shoe shine stand and a fruit stand on the corner of West Washington and Main. But he always had this passion for automobiles. So consequently, you've seen some of his cars. In fact, this was one of the old ones, but some like that he would use to transport people, especially soldiers, from Camp Severe to Greenville and back to the camp. Later, he started going a little bit further, from Greenville to Lawrence, to Clinton, Newberry, Columbia, the other direction from Greenville to where it shows and points in between to Greenville. And of course, these turned out to be quite lucrative routes in the final analysis. In fact, when the federal government started regulating transportation, those particular routes automatically became the Eagle bus line, or Henry Theadore's routes, my grandfather's cars. And he kept them for years, and then finally sold the Greenville to Columbia route to Greyhound, and the route from Greenville to Greenwood to Carolina Trailway. It was a true Horatio Alger story. Local bakeries were prevalent in the 20s, which prompted George Porras to start up the People's Bakery with its original location on the second block of Pendleton Street on the right side. They moved so quickly and grew so quickly that they became a top-flight competitor to the Clausen Bakery at that time and had to move to another location on the corner of Rutherford and across from the old Triangle Pharmacy, you might remember it, where they built a very large bakery to take care of their needs. The People's Bakery was known for their big boy bread. It was a little baker with the top of the hat on his head, and then also for a cinnamon roll package with 6 large cinnamon rolls with that good icing on top for the magnificent price of 5 cents. People's Bakery stayed in business for a long time, but ultimately did close down. A single cigarette machine was the beginning of Atlas Vending Company in 1933, which now located on Lowndes Hill Road, employing in excess of 400 employees and serving all lines of vending products in several different states. Elliot Crackedy serves as board chair. An underlying need, though, for Greenville Greek immigrants was the freedom to form a place of worship, because that freedom to worship was forbidden for many, many centuries under the Ottoman Empire rule. So they didn't gain their independence until 1821 from Turkish rule. Of course, we all recognize the fact that the freedom to worship is something that sometimes we take for granted. They were without it, and they were very sensitive to that extent. My father first migrated to America in 1906, returned to Greece, and then came back permanently in 1911 to join his future father-in-law, Nick Maris, who had a little cafe down at Southern Depot. We know why my father came here, but we really have never been able to understand how my grandfather selected Greenville for the choice of this city, although we're so delighted that he did at the time. After being here a few years, my father sent to Greece, and my mother came without knowing the language on one of those cattle boats, as we referred to them earlier, to New York, and then on a train from New York to Southern Depot, where my dad and her father met her. They were later married in Greenville, South Carolina in 1916. Andreas and Stavrula Theodorakis tied the knot at that time and was considered to be the first Greek Orthodox wedding in Greenville. During the 20s, however, the small Greek community of Greenville began with worship services at Christ Church, with an occasional visit from a priest in Atlanta for services. With only 11 Greek families, this small community was incorporated in 1929 and became the Greek community of Greenville Incorporated. Meeting at Christ Church in 1931, they decided to purchase a house on 15 DeCamp Street, 2-story frame house, to be utilized for church services, fellowship hall, and Sunday school room, and Greek students. The hall, of course, they had adopted the name the St. George Greek Orthodox Church in 1936. St. George hired its first full-time priest in 1936. His name was Father Michael Makuris. By 1941, with 30 families, St. George achieved sufficient growth to build a church and fellowship hall at that same location. And this was during World War II when construction materials were very, very limited, as we all know. Therefore, the Byzantine Empire style structure that was made actually of a frame of wood. The twin tower facade faced to Camp Street. The firm of J.P. Joe Cunningham, who also is the grandfather of one of your members, Elliot Easley, and Frank H. Cunningham designed this first building for the Greek Orthodox Church with a construction cost of $28,500 and a seating capacity of 260. We'd love to have those type of expense arrangements today, wouldn't we? His Eminence, the Most Reverend Archbishop Athenagoras, who is seen with the long beard, he was the Archbishop of North and South America, chose a location on DeKalb Street. He's shown here with George Manus, who was president of the St. George community from 1934 to 1948, His Grace the Bishop Nices, and also with Reverend Emil Poulin, who pastored churches not only in Greenville, but also in Spartanburg and Asheville. The first service in this particular church was held on Christmas Day, 1942. The Eastern Orthodox faith is one that is extremely important to all of us. But actually, the church in 1942, 50 years later, was demolished and made room for the cathedral that now exists there for all of us. By the next decade, of course, the congregation grew to 325 families. And this new church, which was 17,000 square feet, was completed in 1995 with the first service taking place in December. When it was named the official cathedral for South Carolina, the St. George community once again reached yet another milestone in its famous history. Our community has been blessed with a rich resource to carry on the dreams of our parents and their parents, and to make those dreams a reality for the future. Now, as a vibrant Christian community, it is our mission to look to the future, to seek ways to enhance our orthodox ways of life, and to share them more widely with others. In order to accomplish this mission, our building construction phase for the future is called Building Through Faith. It includes a family center, a gym-type freestanding building, expansion of our education building, which hopefully will be able to bring in preschool and possibly child care as well as early grades in the public school system. And it also will include a new parking center where some of the buildings will be demolished and more room will be given for parking and for our Greek festival. Father Tom Pistolis came to us in 1987. He began his spiritual leadership in Greenville that year. Through his guidance, the Greek Orthodox Church, or the Greek Orthodox Cathedral, I'll say, has enjoyed its greatest progress. Father Tom explains the Greek and Eastern Orthodox faith in this way. Historically, traditionally, theologically, ritualistically, we are continuing Christianity as it was followed in the early apostolic church over 2,000 years ago. The Greek immigrants making Greenville their new homeland shared a deep dedication to preserve their ethnic culture, and Greenvillians encouraged them to do so. The church became the bond to hold all of these immigrants together, to help them meet the challenges of a newly adopted society and a newly adopted homeland. Many of them live within the radius of the church. DeKalb Street, Marshall Avenue, Central Avenue, and of course, Barrett Street. Easter, of course, is our most cherished religious event. 40 days prior to Easter, fasting and various other prohibitions and restraints begin. Culminated with the crucifixion services on Thursday night, and then of course Good Friday services when a candlelight procession of a funeral bier known as the epitaphio is carried around the cathedral. On Saturday, a resurrection mass is celebrated at midnight. When all the lights are turned out, it is totally dark. The darkness symbolizes Jesus passing through the underworld. But at midnight, the priest appears from the altar. Let's see if I can get that. There we go. Right in that particular location. And he will have the only lit candle. And he will say, light the light before us, which means receive the light. And finally, a procession outside of the cathedral symbolizes the resurrection of Jesus. Following the Easter midnight services, parishioners will greet one another. And one will say, Christos Anesti, which means Christ has risen. The other person will say, Alithos Anesti, which means truly he has risen. Our journey today began in the early 20th century when Greek immigrants through Ellis Island were struggling for survival in Greenville, South Carolina. In transition, we have an opportunity to view the Greenville Greek community in the early 21st century, composed of first and second generation Americans of Greek descent, who in their own right have made a mark for themselves in Greenville already. Earlier, I spoke about the first church being built with the dedication of 30 families. During World War II, I'm proud to say that there were 28 young Greek men who served in our armed forces for World War II with pride. Shortly after World War II, our community experienced our first professional. Dr. Pete Manus, in 1957, graduated from MUSC. Today, a number of young Greek Americans are practicing in different fields of medicine. We have cardiologists, interns, neurosurgeons, gynecologists, dentists, endodentists, ophthalmologists, optometrists, and a variety of other health providers. Attorneys of all categories, engineers, architects, scientists, bankers, financial advisors, architects, and of course entrepreneurs of all types. The list goes on and on. We even have some who dared to enter the risk-taking field of politics. Can you believe that? So we conclude and reflect on our journey, as well as review the present and the future of the Greenville Greek community. I'll leave with you this thought: the best is yet to come. Thank you very much.